In the last video on the Land Rover Discovery 2, I set it up to flat tow behind my truck and camper, which also included having to replace the broken factory front bumper. And because I needed something quickly before a trip I was going on, I decided to go with the cheaper steel bumper off of Amazon, which needed some modifications for what I wanted and needed. So in today's video, I'll show how I completed these modifications, which included some structural additions, installing a Badland Winch, and finishing it off with some custom LED lighting. So let's get into it on Rebuild Revival. This is one of those cheaper bumpers off of Amazon or eBay. This arrived within like 3 or 4 days from when I ordered it, which is what I needed because I needed to figure out how I'm gonna attach the tow bar to this bumper or any other bumper that I got. And how we're gonna do that is with this attachment here. This attaches to the tow bar and then allows us to tie into one of these D-ring mounts. I bought an extra one because I wasn't sure how strong the ones were gonna be with this cheaper bumper. They actually look pretty strong, especially if you get some like grade 8 bolts instead of the bolts that they come with. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm gonna use. I may be using these ones that I ordered. They're actually a little bit thicker. I think this is 7/8 and this is 1 inch. So we're gonna figure out that as well as mounting this Badland winch. This thing is a little big for this bumper's winch mounting area, so we're gonna have to modify that a little bit. I'm also gonna be welding this bumper together. It comes as 3 pieces and then you bolt it together, but I think to make it a little bit stronger, we're going to weld everything together. I'm also gonna add in some additional support brackets from the frame to the bumper. It only has the one side where the winch box is on the inside of the frame, but I want to add another one coming from this side of the frame out to the bumper as well. So a couple of things we're going to do to modify this bumper to what we need or want to do. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've ground down all of the joints where I'm going to tack this thing together or eventually weld it together. So now I'm just gonna start tacking this thing up and then we'll fully weld it out. I got this thing fully welded in and ground down all the welds smooth so it'll look nice once it's painted. So now I need to set it up on the truck, and we're gonna need to mark off some stuff that we're gonna do. All right, I've got the bumper where I want it. This thing is not completely straight. You know, it was a cheap bumper, but it's lined up pretty good as it's gonna get. But right now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna fab up this piece where it's gonna bolt from this side of the frame rail all the way to the bumper. So basically it's gonna be a plate going to the bumper and then boxed over into that side. I think that's gonna do it. So I've got both brackets tacked in. Here's the passenger side and here is the driver's side. So now we just need to pull the bumper off and then fully weld those brackets out. So I've got the bumper sitting up here on the workbench and I want to figure out how I'm going to be mounting these recovery points. I don't want to use the ones that came with the bumper because they're a little bit too narrow for my tow bar. I think I mentioned that already. So I'm going to put them, originally they were about here. I'm going to move them out to here, and you see how this is angled. I'm going to bevel the recovery point so it sits flush like that. And I'm going to put a plate here in the back, and drill a couple of holes through the front of the bumper, weld into the plate, and then I'll weld this to the front of the bumper. So we're gonna fab all of that stuff up right now and get everything welded in. All right, so now that we've got the angle done on the D-ring mounts, they're sitting pretty level. I'm gonna put a square on the flat piece here and make sure it is completely square with this flat edge right here. I also beveled all of the edges so I can get good penetration, and I'm gonna preheat with the torch. So first, I'll get it up there, tack it on where it needs to be, both of them. Then I'll heat up the ring with the torch and then burn it in. So let's get this one mounted first. All right, so we are done with the D-rings. We are done with reinforcing the backside. I'll probably clean these edges up a little bit, maybe match this little round edge here, kind of make them look a little bit nicer, but we're pretty much done with reinforcing everything and mounting these D-rings. Now we need to focus our attention on getting this winch mounted. This is obviously the Badland Apex 1200 with the synthetic rope. And as you can see, this thing is pretty big. It's really tall. You've got the control box here on top. I thought I was gonna have to modify the bumper to clear that control box, as well as modify this support bar right here at the front of the Land Rover and notch out the grill a little bit. But you can actually relocate this box remotely, and it comes with all of the stuff needed to do that. So we've got our instruction manual, our power cutoff, all of the bolts and hardware necessary for install, and then we've got a relocation base plate for the control box. This you'll also need, as well as these longer power and ground cables. So we'll get into that once we take this thing apart. And then we've also got the remote here with the remote cable, the fair lead, and these are little wraps for the rope, and we've also got the tow hook. Now I'll just remove the control box from the winch. It's just a few screws here on top. Now I can disconnect these leads, which we'll use the extension cables for. Now I can mount the control box to the relocation base plate. And you'll need to install these little extensions to the leads. And here is a little cover box that will eventually house the extension cables, just like this. And then it's got a little cover for that box. I think what I'm gonna do is remove the battery box and this jack holder, and I'm hoping I can fit the battery and the control box in this area here. So I'm gonna remove all of this and then hopefully we can put it there. This thing's pretty easy to remove. You just remove the jack, the battery, and then there's a few bolts holding it in. Okay, so I cut up this battery tray a little bit. And put that back down in there. I still need to make more room for the control box, so I'll need to cut out this bracket, which also has a ground junction block on it that we'll need to replace. I need to make some longer cables. It doesn't come with long enough cables to route all the way through. So I gotta go get some cables and make the cables that run from this all the way over to the control box and then mount this. I think we're going to need to notch this out a little bit to allow for that. So now I'll just route the extension cables that I made to the control box going down to the winch. The kit comes with 3 different colored cable insulators to help keep everything organized. Now I'll mount the winch to the bumper so I can cut out that notch for the free spin handle. Boom. All right, looks like I'm still gonna have to notch this little cross member right here because the free spin handle, I mean, I still need to go up about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. So I'm gonna have to notch this somehow up over. And I think this box is probably gonna hit as well. I've marked off where I'm gonna be cutting this support right here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that out and then we'll get the bumper set back up there and figure out how we're gonna fabricate our notched out support. I'm done with the support bar and I took the bumper off so I could grind down all the welds and paint it. So we will be painting that shortly. And then for the bumper, I did clean up some of the spots that the paint was kind of flaking off from welding and stuff like that because I do need to paint this as well. But I also added these square plates. Once I got the bumper all lined up exactly where I wanted it, I welded these plates on. So the bolt holes are just big enough for the bolts to go through, so there's not really any play, whereas the factory ones were kind of ovaled out. Especially from me trying to adjust it, I did oval them out a little bit more, so these should hold the bumper nice and tight. I also had to clearance the grill for that support bar that I just welded in. Once it's bolted up, you can't even really tell. Now I'm gonna prep the support bar and the bumper for paint. I'm just going to hit it with some wax and grease remover, and then I'll use this gray filler primer just to fill in any imperfections where I was welding or anything like that. And then I'm either gonna use this truck bed coating or this hammered Rust-Oleum. I'm just trying to match what's already on there. And I've also got some of the paint that matches the Land Rover, so I may paint this in that color because the support bar was originally the same color as the paint. So let's just prep all of this out and we'll start painting. I think what I'll do is I'll do 1 or 2 coats in the areas that I primed and then 1 final coat on the whole bumper. Now we're gonna mount the winch. I kept it up here on the jack stand so I can get to the bolts underneath. And instead of using their, I think this is about grade 5, the metric uses a different grading system. It says 8.8, whereas what I got is grade 8 and it'll say 10.9. So I've got all grade 8 hardware. I've also got these really thick washer plates that will be on the bottom for added support. So let's go ahead and put this in. The nuts slide into the winch first. And I also went ahead and got some grade 8 hardware for the bumper bolts too. All right, now we need to wire this thing up. So I'll just pull the cover off of the main winch leads and hook all of the cables up. I numbered these 1, 2, and 3. Back on with the cover. Okay, now the ground, which is around the backside. Now I need to wire in the main power cutoff for the winch, and I'm gonna put it right in this area here. I actually cut some of the battery box off, the battery and jack box here, so I can reuse the cover and cover all this up, which will look pretty cool. So that portion is to this clip right here. So that'll clip in there, and then it still has 1 clip here. So it's only missing 1 clip here, which is not a big deal. And for this, I'm gonna mount it to this with a little bracket that I made. It's drying. The paint on it is drying right now, so I'm gonna mount this right in this area. That is sweet. The bracket that I had to remove to fit the control box here also had a ground junction block on it. It was pretty much in this same area here. I just replaced it with one of these little aftermarket ones and then hooked all the grounds up to that. The main ground cable comes right off of the battery, goes to the junction block, and then splits off into all of these other things, which some of them we tied into for the winch and other stuff, but most of them were just factory. All right, now let's bolt the fair lead in. Now we can turn to free spin. And I think pull, no? There we go. Very cool. Just hooking this hook up. Okay, I got the remote plugged in. Now we'll just turn the free spin off and let's see. All right, it's working. Perfect. The last thing that we're gonna do on this bumper is install some lighting and cover up these holes that were for the original bolt-on recovery point, but we didn't use that. I was prepping this thing for a trip that I went on and I didn't really have time to do some of these extra things. I should have covered up these holes, but either way, I'm gonna do that now and then install the lighting like I mentioned. So now that we're back, we're gonna finish this thing off. And the lighting that I'm gonna install are these 6-inch flush mount rough country spotlights. And these, I think they're maybe 3.5-inch square GG lighting floodlights. I was gonna install these factory fog lights after refinishing them, but they don't really fit in the bumper. They kind of hit in a couple of different areas, so they don't really fit very well. So we're gonna go with these GG lighting pods. They're gonna be flush mounted as well. I'll have to make this hole a little bit bigger, no big deal. And this is an S model, so it didn't come with factory fog lights, but all of the wiring is already there, which is really nice. You just need to add a switch, a relay, pull the wiring out, and then get this thing programmed. So we're gonna run over to British Car Service and get this thing programmed so we can utilize that factory wiring. All right guys, so we're here at British Car Service in Inglewood, California. If you guys need any work done on your Land Rovers, go ahead and check them out for sure. They've got a lot of cool stuff inside. Let's go check out what they got going on. Check this thing out, guys. A 1949 Series 1. This thing's super cool. And check this out, it's a 72 Series 3. This thing's really sweet too. Ooh. This thing is super clean. All right guys, so now we're gonna code the fog lights to work.
Body control unit. Input our settings. So now we can do the lights. This one is a fog lamps that you can change. Main, no main, or none. So there it is. Pretty easy.
That's it. So another thing you need to do is put the switch in. This is a factory fog light switch. They just pop out of here. The wiring is already behind them. For the fog lights, it's this green connector. Sometimes they're in different positions. My rear lights were in the top, and I actually had to use a different switch because the one that I had wouldn't fit in this second position. If you look at them, this one doesn't have a top and this one does. So depending on which ones you have in which positions, you may have to switch them around or get a couple different ones, but now we've got the switch in there. You also need to put a relay in this position. My car didn't have a relay in this position, so what I did is I took the horn and swapped it down there, and that is these ones here. So this is the horn relay that originally went right here, and I just swapped it down here for the time being, and then I'll get another relay. And there you go, our factory fog light wiring is working, and now we can hook our pods up to that wiring, and then we'll just have to wire these ones into another switch and a relay. I'm gonna start mounting the lights. I need to make this hole a little bit bigger. I need to make these holes a little bit bigger. And then eventually I'm gonna weld up these 4 holes right here. I am gonna pull the headlights out because the other fog light wiring is behind this headlight. So I need to pull this one out. I guess I could leave that one in. But yeah, let's get this headlight out and then we'll just start mounting these lights. So for this side, I'm actually going to tap the holes so I don't have to get the nuts on the backside. So we'll just go ahead and tap these. All right, the lights are all mounted up. Now I just need to pull the lights out and then weld these holes up. We'll paint everything and then we'll put the lights back in and then wire them all up. All I'm gonna do is clean the paint off. I'm gonna put these little washers inside and then I'll just tack all around, fill that up with weld, grind it down smooth, and then we'll paint it. I got these sweet goggles because I had eye surgery recently, so need to keep any metal shavings out of there. All right, we've got everything masked off in the front of the Land Rover. I've also got all of those little spot welds ground down smooth. So now we're ready to prep this for paint, lay down some primer, and then eventually paint it. I think I'm gonna do a one light coat of paint over the whole thing just so it's uniform, so I need to mask off a couple more spots. All right, we're all done painting. I just need to let this dry for a little bit before I remove all of the paper. But I want to start running the wiring for the spots. So I'm going to mount the relay over there, and then obviously the leads to the ground and the power are going to be right in this area. And then we'll run the leads coming down to the lights, down through kind of where all the wiring goes for the winch. We'll just kind of run it through here like that, and then I'll run the switch along the firewall, and then we'll go in through this grommet right here into the cab. Here it is. So for the floodlights and what we're going to be using as our fog lights, we're going to use the factory harness, which is this connector right here. This would go to the original fog lights. And we're going to take the connector off of the harness that comes with these lights and just clip this connector. And then we will connect it into the harness here. These are just power and ground. So we'll cut this and we'll tie it into our factory harness. And I'll leave a little space so if I need to put this back, I can. Factory. I've got all the wiring ran where it needs to go. Everything is plugged in. I've got the two spotlights sitting there and then the floodlights here. So I'm gonna go turn them on and test that everything is working. All right, everything is working. So now we just need to kind of clean up the wiring and then mount the lights. All right, check that out. I got everything all cleaned up. The wiring's all ran and tucked away. And those look sweet. Much better than a bunch of holes in the front of this thing. Now it's not dark yet, but once it is, I will go outside and turn these on and we'll see how bright they are. Like I said, these are Rough Country and these are GG lighting. So we'll see how good both of them are separately, together, all of that. But yeah, I'm super happy with how that turned out. Very cool. All right, so I brought the Land Rover out in the middle of an OHV. It's pitch black out, and I just want to test the lights out here. So check this out, guys. First, we're gonna do just the floodlights. Oh, now these are GG lighting, yellow floods. They've got 4 LEDs in each one. And I think that is actually really, really good. Now check it out with the spotlight. Like, boom. That is super bright. I can see that whole hill over there. So these are the rough country 6-inch spotlights. I think they've got 4 or 6. Oh, they've got 6 LEDs in each. Yeah, that looks really good. I'm happy with that. These floodlights are really good for their price point. So are the spots. These spots are super budget friendly. I'll put a link in the description to all of these. But yeah, I'm happy with those. Now let's just go for a little cruise with the lights on. I'm also going to replace this rear bumper. It's got the same type of custom repair as the front one did. Bondo, foam, all that good stuff. So I've got a steel off-road bumper. It's another one of these like cheaper eBay or Amazon ones. It's got this same type of textured paint as the front one, so it should match pretty good. And I've got a used set of these bumper lights that I got out of a pick apart. These lights have a couple cracks and it looks like somebody sanded on them, so they just don't look that good. Maybe they can be cleaned up, but I've got this used set, so we're just gonna use these. So yeah, let's get this bumper off. So this bumper is pretty easy to remove. You just take out the bumper lights, unplug them, and then you've got a bolt behind each one and it should come out. Another thing to note with these steel rear bumpers is there is a bracket that mounts underneath the tow hitch, and with these cheaper rear bumpers they don't always line up properly, so I had to oval out these holes a little bit, but not a big deal. And just like that, the rear bumper is all done. We've got the lights in, the shackles on. I just put these parking sensors in the holes for the high lift jacks temporarily because these are aftermarket and I don't even know if I'm going to keep that system. So those are temporary. A little bit of rubber, foam. We'll hopefully keep those in there, and if not, whatever, it's not a big deal. And if I need to use those jack points, I'll just shove them in the hole. So there is the rear bumper. Looks pretty good. All right guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. I think the bumper install came out super clean on this truck, especially since it's a cheaper bumper off of Amazon. Although we did need to make quite a few modifications for what we wanted and needed, it came out super clean in the end. Especially since the control box to the Badland Winch is mounted remotely under the hood. But I am interested in what you guys think about how this bumper looks on the Discovery, so definitely drop me a comment down below. And if you are enjoying the Discovery content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.